What is up? It's your girl, Dr. Tarika Lewis, otherwise known as Dr. Lou, your partner in success and progress. And I'm super excited to be with you today. I'm double checking all my feeds really fast just to make sure that you can see me and hear me. And I'm excited to be with you today. As I said, I'm your partner in success and progress, and I help people to succeed using education and other tools. And I'm here to talk to you today live, as I do on Saturdays, my Saturday lives. I want to talk to you about the fact, or rather issue a slight warning, and that's don't get it twisted. Schools are going to have to do a whole lot of changing before they're really ready to help your child succeed, and it doesn't matter who's in office, it's going to be that way no matter what. And the reason I really felt the need to share this is because as I'm watching people either agonize or celebrate over the most recent elections, and I'm listening to people talk about reform in so many other systems, what I don't hear people talking about is real transformation in education. And education reform is something that we've been hearing about for forever, as both an educator and a parent and just a member of communities that are really directly impacted by education and have used education as the great equalizer. I can tell you that education is not only important, it is imperative to do some overhauls, or all of this social justice that we're talking about, all of these protests that we're seeing are going to be for naught, because education is what we use to teach not just children, but also the adults how to function in the society we build. So education is built on a particular platform. It's based on the beliefs of a society. And if we don't make changes in education along with changes in society, we'll be right back where we started in no time. So again, the topic for today is don't get it twisted. A lot of change is going to happen if education is really going to fulfill its promise to us. And it doesn't matter who's in office, we're still going to need major change. So let's just get into why that is true, because that's what today's broadcast is about. And if we see the need for a spinoff, then I'm happy to pop back in on another live or drop a video or respond to your questions in other ways. But let me just go ahead and jump right in and ask you to please comment really quickly right now if you're watching me live or on the replay. And regardless of which way you're watching, jump in that chat box or the comments or however you're watching me, depending on which platform, because I'm streaming live on several right now. Jump into wherever you can, ask your questions, share your comments. If it's something that you want me to share with the group, we'll definitely put it on screen and address it right then and there. If it's something that's going to take more time, I'll be happy to circle back. But let me know how you're watching. And let's get into why schools are going to have to change drastically if they're going to really do what we think they should be doing. Okay, the first point I want to make about this topic is that the school models that we currently see are built on a promise of a better life for children and the families and the communities that they impact. They don't say it, but you have to think about the fact that, and I studied marketing for a bit, not saying I'm a marketing guru, but I did study it to use in business. And the bottom line is that marketing is really never selling a product. It is, but it isn't. Marketing sells a product by selling you the idea that your life is going to be better or you're going to be better. It sells you a result because of the product. So I say that to say with schools, the whispered promise is a better life, better communities, better all the way around. Now, that's not what you think about when you see it, but then you have to go back to those Marlboro commercials. For those of you that remember them back in the day, any cigarette commercial, they never showed a person smoking a cigarette. They never showed a person coughing. They never showed any of the adverse effects or anything about cigarettes. They showed you a person on a jet ski, a person with perfectly white teeth on a date with other people looking like they were rich or they were a cowboy and they were tough. They sold a lifestyle. They sold results. And the same is true for schools, right? They're not selling you books and assignments and all that other stuff. They're selling you the promise that they're going to help your child have a better life. Now, let's look at how schools operate and how they purport to do it, right? The model that we currently use as our education model is based on a model that has been in existence since the colonial days. And I'm not talking about colonialism as it currently exists now, even though that's bad enough. I'm talking about back when the United States was a bunch of colonies, deciding if they were going to fight England to become free. Back then, the models that were established are the foundations by which we still build schools today. So I want you to think about that, because schools were designed to do one thing, and that was to socialize children into the currently existing society with all of its rules. Now, what was that society back then? What was its goals? What was its purposes? Who was allowed to succeed and who wasn't? I want you to think about that. And I want you to understand that schools were designed to perpetuate that. That means to keep it going, right? So there was, and if you look back, I want you after this broadcast to Google the first schools in America and then ask yourself or Google who attended them. And you're going to find that they were attended by white males of a certain level in society. And the goal was to perpetuate that group of white males being able to continue to do what they wanted them to do. And understand this, they weren't even the top of the food chain for the readily available schools that were available then. They were going to be the working class. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. My point is the working class serves one purpose for the ruling class, right? And that's to keep it lucrative. So that's what schools were designed to do. They have not stopped doing that to this day. Whether it's intentional or unintentional, the model perpetuates that. All right, so this is what we have to think about. In colonialist society, it was built on the very injustices that we see people protesting right now. It leads to those injustices continuing that we hear so much about. And no amount of improvement on that same system is going to change its original purpose. It leads to unfairness. It leads to oppression. It leads to disenfranchisement. It leads to segregation in so many ways. It leads to everything else, and it facilitates it and keeps it going. And the job of schools is to kind of advertise themselves in a manner that draws families in and makes them trust, makes the families trust that school's going to do something good. And in this case, what? Give your child a chance for a better life. And I'm not saying that school doesn't serve a purpose in terms of, helping children who attend to have a better life. I'm not saying that it doesn't. But what I am saying is better than what? Because in your mind, you're thinking great life, child's going to be okay. He's going to be able to live and do well for himself and take care of his family. But better than what and whose purpose does it really serve? All right. So having said that, now that we've gotten over those two things, we understand what the school model is built on, the illusion of a better life. We understand the foundation, the principles, the founding principles of the school system was to socialize us, socialize children, socialize families and students into the society as it currently exists with all of its norms. And now let's look at what's happened. COVID-19 shined a spotlight on schools yet again. Every time there's a tragedy or an issue, you can look at a couple of places that are going to be hit really hard, that are going to be that are going to showcase what issues really are. One of them will be schools, but the other ones will be, corporate structures or the workforce and religion. Those areas you're going to see the impact on society. All right. So having said that, COVID-19 put a spotlight on certain elements of school. Let me tell you the inadequacies that COVID-19 showed us that school systems have. Number one, we learned that schools are not really prepared to protect kids. Now, I didn't say that COVID-19 was the cause of that. Although we like to pretend like COVID-19 is the problem, schools weren't protecting kids since kids started getting shot just sitting in a classroom, right? For a long time now, schools haven't been able to protect kids. And I'm not bashing the schools for that. That's a reality, whether you like it or not. Schools have not been able to protect children, and they have not been able to protect children in terms of them developing their identity, feeling good about themselves, and in terms of the fact that it has often perpetuated the very biased systems that oppress adults in society. Schools just kind of carry that forward and started early so the kids are used to it. So it does not protect, they cannot protect kids. Number one, schools were not prepared to teach online. What does that speak to? Adaptability. Any particular group, organization, or species or organism that functions well and succeeds has to be able to adapt. If you look in science, the organisms that adapt quickly are the ones that survive. If you're not into science and you want to look at it from a religious perspective, the same thing applies. You've got to be resilient. You've got to be able to face and overcome things and transform into what's needed in that particular moment. No matter how we look at life and existence, transformation and the ability to adapt is key to survival and success. And schools have not adapted. Again, I talk about that model that exists since the colonial days. We're talking about since the 1600s. We're talking about over 400 years of the same thing, built on the same foundations with similar promises. All right. So also, schools were not poised to adjust, period. And they were already failing. And I know because I saw schools from the inside out as a parent, as a student, as a teacher, as an administrator, as a builder. And I can tell you that by and large, overall, schools were failing at doing what they set out to do, which was give every kid an opportunity for a better life, if we're to believe that promise. So because of that, they weren't going to miraculously stand up and be great during COVID-19. And we just got to see a little taste of that. Now, the bottom line is we are in the 21st century and schools were not preparing students to enter into the 21st century world. And we see it all across the board, whether it's the war about devices, and kids not needing to have electronic devices or use computers and all this other stuff, when in essence, the whole world operates in a very highly technology based and driven model. So the kid might be sitting in classrooms learning on books, and the closest they get to seeing technology in action is their book is now an electronic PDF, an electronic file. But at the same token, they step out of that classroom and they're expected to hit the ground running at corporation XYZ and be able to do things that the schools didn't bother to prepare them to get comfortable doing in order to learn. And so I say that to say that's a problem. That's a huge problem when your very premise is you're going to help a child have a better life. And the minute you turn them out into the world, they're unprepared to deal with the world. How are you going to have a better life in a world that you don't know how to deal with? The answer is you're not. All right. So improving schools is the equivalent of improving the horse and buggy. You're never going to get to the society we have now where everybody has a car or has access to transportation. And going to transportation as the model, I just want to share a little story that sticks with me all the time. And I'm not like a huge fan of Henry Ford. I haven't read his biography 50, 11 times. And I know that's not a term. I have not, he's not my dude. And there are a lot of people that have issues with a lot of things Henry Ford did. I'm not here to advocate here or there, but he has a quote that really stuck with me. Somebody was talking to Henry Ford about, how he made the strides he did in business and how he did what he did and how he impacted society. And the question that they asked was, how did you figure out what the public needed and get them to buy into it? And he said, it's quite simple. You never ask people that you are trying to carry forward through innovation what they want, because they can only see as far as what's right in front of them. So had I asked people what they wanted, they would have told me they wanted a better horse and buggy, and the Model T would have never been made. The same can be argued for personal computers. I remember reading and researching when I was going to school for technology. And one of the things that was said was people really felt like the big, huge supercomputers were too much, right? But it was okay for a big corporation to have that. And they had to be in a super cooled room. And I'm talking the size of an entire room. And the temperature had to be so cold that humans really can't sit in there for long periods of time, or the computer was going to melt everything. Well, when the personal computer was invented and presented to people, people kind of had a problem with it. It seemed like an extravagance that's not necessary. And so why do I need this? And so again, had we asked people what they needed and wanted, they would have never thought they needed a personal computer. But I want you to think about whether or not you can name 3 people in your life that don't have a personal computer, a smartphone, a smart device of some sort in their entire house or in their lives. You can't, because the world operates on those. And even if you do, that's one of the challenges that we ran into with COVID-19 and what we ran into with emergency broadcast notifications, which is one of the things that I've worked on with the federal government, is how do we reach people who don't have smart devices to warn them about pending doom? It's hard when everybody has them, and that's the easiest way to get to people. And so again, I go back to schools were still stuck on an old model. They're resisting the modern day technology that exists everywhere around us. And they didn't want to change and still are not. Part of the resistance to online learning is not wanting to step into the 20th century, right? We've been online for that long at least. I got a question. I'm going to go ahead and put it on the screen so I can address it. Is this why South Korea is more advanced than our students in the US? This is what I can tell you, again, as an educator, as an educational researcher about US students and their performance versus the world. A long time ago, we stopped being the forerunner in student performance. And it has a lot to do with us kind of doing this and putting blinders on, doing this and protecting jobs, not even jobs, and protecting comfort levels as opposed to moving forward and changing and shifting to adapt to be still a forerunner in the global community, in the global economy and otherwise. So it's not just South Korea. There are many other countries that have surpassed the United States in terms of student and other performance. And it's because of adaptability. It's because of adjustments. It's because of staying ahead of a technological curve. We hear technology, we think computers. Technology, the definition of technology is the best means of doing something. So it's not that we're attached to computers It's that technology says that we keep up with what's the best way to do whatever it is that we're trying to do. And that goes back to our schools. So in answer to your question, student performance is going to equate to the investment of the schools and the ability of the school to prepare the student to face the world around them and to be a leader in that world. And so we have kind of locked ourselves into an old model, and amongst ourselves, we're still the greatest. But the minute that we put ourselves on a platform where we have to interact with other people from other places who have been exposed to more, who've had 5G for a lot longer than we have, just for example, then we begin to struggle. And we struggle with, are we going to keep looking around us, and are we going to adapt, or are we going to do this and say, nope, we're still the greatest? And there's one of those choices, right? Look around us and adapt, or cover our eyes and say we're still the greatest. One of those choices keeps us the greatest, keeps us great, keeps us advancing, keeps us leading, keeps us doing things that we say that we want to do. And the other choice keeps us in denial, falling backwards, failing. And that's the reality. So I've now told you why. It doesn't matter who sits in the White House. It doesn't matter who sits in the governor's mansion. It doesn't matter who your representatives are. It doesn't even matter who your school board is. Your schools are going to continue to slack and continue to fall backwards in terms of preparing your child for the world around them if we don't make some drastic changes about how we choose to educate our system, our children, and the systems by which we educate them. If we don't change along with our changing views about the world around us, and the social constructs that we're trying to adjust, if we don't change education and the model upon which we build all of our educational and academic efforts, we will still not only be behind, but every effort we make to change society is going to fail. Because the minute that we have to train other people to come and do more, they won't be prepared. And the rest of the world is going to keep going on. That's what we know. The rest of the world is going to keep moving forward. The minute you invent something, the rest of the world takes it, and they're going to try to build on that. So if you're not building forward too, then you were the winner yesterday. Your record's about to get broken. That's just kind of how it works. All right. So having said that, I want to jump into what we need to do. But let's see. First, I have another question. When digital technology gets fully integrated, what role do physical learning resources play at that point? Like paper, pencils, textbooks, etc. Great question, Jamanda Lou. So when digital technology gets fully integrated, tactile things will still exist. And I want you to look at your personal life right now. And I want you to think about, we may not be tethered to paper for everything, but raise your hand if you don't have any paper, anything in your household. You can't, because those tactile devices are still going to exist. We're just going to evolve in terms of how we do it. But how many understand the value of being able to do things in real time via your technology device, your technological device that you're using, right? Life is easier. You order food on your computer or on your smartphone really quick, right? So you order things via Amazon. Some of that stuff can come same day. It wouldn't happen without technology. If we have to wait for the horse and buggy to ride all the way out to the coast, and then somebody to fly it over to another coast to pick up what it is that you want or need, or what, even if it's intercoastal, it's so much faster to be able to use technology as it was meant to be used. All right, so great questions, guys. So now that we've established why we're going to have to change how we look at education, that kind of brings me to the final point. In order for us to build better lives for our kids, ourselves, our communities, we're going to have to change the way we perceive education. And that's going to help us to change the world. We've been talking a lot over the last year in 2020 about changing the world. That's been one of the silver linings to all of these clouds that I keep hearing people complain about, is that we've had to take time to evaluate ourselves, to evaluate our relationships, to evaluate the world around us, and decide that we're going to inconvenience ourselves and try to make impact and try to make real and lasting change. And so we have to also change education, how we perceive it and how we look at it. Part of the debate about whether or not a person needs to go to school in order to be successful comes from the fact that we're looking at school as one particular model. When your school is the globe, your school is the world around you, your school is everywhere. You are learning all day, every day, whether you realize it or not. You just might not be in a formal setting to learn. So if you treat it like that, and understand this, that I don't care who you're going to name as successful, they had to learn something in order to get there. And you're going to hear that as a common theme. I know I've said it before. I will say it again. People love to list Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and all these other people because they don't have a formal college degree, but they got into Ivy League colleges, both of them. And if you name anybody else, they had the qualifications to go to school. They just realized that that format, that learning platform wasn't ideal for them. You have to understand yourself as a learner in order to figure that out and do that. Everybody that dropped out of school is not a business owner that's making $1 million or even comfortable in their own home and able to pay all their bills from it. So don't get it twisted. That it's not go to school or not go to school. It's how are you going to educate yourself for success? Are you going to educate yourself for success, or are you going to sit in your box? Because that brings us back to the model that currently exists in schools. It really is designed to create employees. And that is by design. That is on purpose. That is not an accident. To create employees that are going to sit in their box. And that's fine if that's the greatness that you aspire to be, the greatest person in your box. Just understand that that's what it is. Okay? And so in order to not perpetuate what is already there that's being protested by so many, in order to not set your kids up to hate the jobs that they are going to have, in order to not set your kids and send them off into the world just looking for a midlife crisis. Let's talk about what a midlife crisis is. And that's my last major point for today. But actually, this is not a point, it's a sub point, right? Because we're still talking about changing how we look at education. But a midlife crisis really is a person looks around at their life and realizes that they hate it, or they hate parts of it, or that they're not happy with it, that the dreams that they had failed, they didn't come to pass, or that they didn't succeed at those dreams, or that they did and it just wasn't what they thought it was going to be. They feel powerless and they act out. And we act like it's a part of life and the way things are supposed to be. And I submit to you that the problem is looking at it that way. It's not a part of life. It's not how it's supposed to be. It's what happens when the thing you thought was supposed to prepare you for life doesn't adequately do it. And you step out into your life and you are not equipped to make the decisions and do the things that it takes to build a life experience that you desire and deserve. That's the recipe. Hold on, let me say it this way. So not doing those things, in other words, going to schools, doing what they tell you to do, not thinking beyond it, and only trying to succeed within that system, you're setting yourself up for that midlife crisis, because you're setting yourself up to create a life that you don't desire or deserve, probably because you deserve better. The flip side to that is setting yourself up with the tools to conquer life, to know your talents, to know, your vision, and to understand that you have a right to make decisions that it takes to say yes, thank you, or no thank you to whatever's offered to you in order to be able to build it. Well, that's the recipe. That's the remedy for the midlife crisis, right? All right. So I say that to say this: with evolution, there is expansion. With your willingness to evolve, you will expand your horizons greatly and drastically. But you have to reevaluate education as a whole through a holistic, honest lens. All right. And having said that, you've got to learn to equalize and protect via education. We tend to treat education like the great equalizer, but it's not. It's not how do I put it? It is in the sense that you will be able to level up from where you would have been without it. It's not in the sense of really making the playing field equal. And that's because it's designed to protect and take care of and push forward the playing field that's not equal, because it was designed by people who benefit from other people not being equal to them. So let me give you an example of that, right? We were taught growing up, get a good education, you'll have a great job, you'll have a great life, right? And what we currently know statistically is that Black women are the most educated demographic group, and that's currently growing, at least in the country, in the United States, but I want to say globally. Just the numbers of Black women that have degrees of some sort, that have finished some sort of formal education, the numbers are huge compared to other groups. But when it comes to looking at salary equality and income equality, rather, and so many other things, that group is still just as oppressed. My understanding is that the communities, not just of color, but of African descent in the United States, still own the same percent of the country's wealth as they did just after slavery. So, did it fix it? No. Doesn't mean that we're not living in nicer houses. It just means that if you look at the playing field objectively, it didn't fix it. And that goes back to my point of it is an equalizer, but it isn't. It alone is not. And so what the solution is that you first and foremost have to remove the boxes, the definitions of how you see success, and decide what does success look like for you, what does it look like for your child, what does it look like for your family, depending on who you're seeking education for. You have to understand that education takes many forms, and you have to get whatever education you need in order to succeed. So that's what the Bill Gates and the Warren Buffetts and the Steve Jobs, they did. They went and got whatever knowledge they needed, filled in knowledge gaps left and right, got skills gaps filled by practice, and they were able to build something. You can too. And so you use education as a tool. You don't look to the education system to take care of you and tell you what to do with it, because they don't have your best interest at heart. They don't know how to. They mean well, but it's not well. It's not going to help you. And as a consultant, that's what I help families do, is to figure out. So I say that to say, after watching this broadcast, my goal is not that you go pull your kid out of school. My first goal is that you like, follow, and subscribe so you can get more information, so you can have the tools that you need to succeed and help your family to do so. So in case I haven't said it, and I know that I haven't, if you like anything you heard today, please follow me, subscribe, like, comment, share, do your thing. Help me get the message out. And for those of you who don't want to debate me on some of this stuff, fight me, verbally fight me. Call me out, message me, let me know, DM me. We can sit on some panels and talk and chop it up. Having said that, let me get back to my final closure, and that is this. What I do every day in my work is I help families to figure out how to use education and other tools to get the success that they really envision for themselves, for their children, for whoever. And once you do that and you take the power into your own hands, what you're doing is you give yourself the right to say, yes, this is great, more of the same, please, or no, thank you. And if you do that, then you're going to force the local schools to have to step up their game, or they're going to lose money, which is exactly what's going on now. They're losing money. We'll talk about that later. And for those of you that are curious about what I mean by that, you can always look at my YouTube channel, the Evolve and Expand YouTube channel. I did a video called The Real Reason Why Schools Want Students in Classrooms. It's eye-opening, and it also breaks down how schools are funded and how they get their money. And you'll see some things that you didn't see before. All right, but in the meantime, thank you so much for listening to this broadcast. Change the way you look at education. Understand that you are a buyer in the education system. Even if you're sending your child to the free school down the street, they get paid on average about $10,000 per student just to send them there. So somebody's still getting paid off your child. So start sizing it up just like you would if you walked on the BMW lot with $100,000 in your pocket and you knew you were going to buy a car. You need to drive that thing. You need to make sure that it's doing what they said it's going to do before you put money in their hands, because you are putting money in their hands by sending your child to the school. Be an informed consumer. So change your view of education, change how you perceive and educate your child, change the world. Until next time, please think about whether or not this information was valuable. If it was, like, follow, and subscribe. Comment with your other questions. Even if you're watching on the replay, I'll get back to you. I'll either drop another video, I'll send you a video personally if it's something that's better answered by video. I'll message you, or I'll include it in a live broadcast or a future video. Until next time, thank you again for watching. It's your girl, Dr. Tarika Lewis, otherwise known as Dr. Lou, your partner in success and progress. I got your back. I'll help you to succeed using education and other tools. I love you. I believe in you. And for now, I am out.